So I started weed at 12. By the age of 16 and a half, I had a crack and heroin addiction. Yeah, it escalated pretty rapidly over those years. I think I just got more and more immersed into a world that just became so chaotic and dark. I got to a point where I had no care or regard for myself.
17 years old, a female in prison. What was that first experience like?
Terrifying. How you view yourself plays a huge part in the choices that you make. I think that trauma and hugely significant life events feed that story very deeply. I try and be really real. I've been to some very dark places within the journey, and I am strong and I am confident and I do know who I am and I do know what works for me and what I want, and I will speak my truth and I will have my boundaries and I won't allow people to violate them. But I also have this deep, soft side that is very vulnerable and actually really needs to be held with my emotions and my space.
There's nothing to hide from being strong. That's a good thing. You know, we should all be able to deal with stuff and be resilient. You can't live life hoping that everyone else is going to make it okay for you.
I want to feel like I've left an impact on this world when I leave. What I took from society, I want to give back. The Women's Collective is all to do with the healing journey of women healing from toxic, abusive relationships or trauma and low self-esteem.
You find more and more women are coming forward with these things that you're working on.
Absolutely. Is that because it's becoming more normalised in society that you seek help? Or is it that the problem is growing?
Natalie, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm in a podcast voice now. All very serious, all very serious. Before we delve in, let's take it right back to the early years. I mean, we've been chatting a little bit offline, but I guess you know from your own, you've had an amazing self-development journey, which we're going to touch on now, but you'd know that to know where we're going, we really have to understand where we've been. And a lot of those early years shape who we are today. I've done a lot of that searching myself to understand maybe what certain things triggers me, why I get angry about certain things or not. So let's take it back. So tell me about the early years. What was childhood like?
Where do you start? I mean, I guess some parts of the story you hear so many people say, like my parents separated when I was really young, but we definitely lived in high-rise flats, poverty, and my mum was on her own. Her mum had passed away when she was younger. Her dad had remarried. She had her own traumas, etc. And my dad came from he was one of 11, big Irish family.
Wow.
And there was a lot of trauma within that family. If you look at the history, there was a lot of addiction, mental health, etc. So my dad was a pretty broken person and wasn't very present. He had alcohol and cannabis addiction, and that went on through his whole life. So he was not there a lot, well, not very present at all as a dad. My mum remarried when I was about 6 or 7. I had an older sister and she remarried and we moved area. So we moved quite a bit, moved area. And just that marriage struggled in its own way. So I think that there was just a lot of conflict that I was surrounded by and not healthy relationships, that wasn't modeled. And my mum always tried her best and she's given me so much. What she's taught me is resilience massively. But there were a lot of challenges. And within that period, there was sexual abuse when I was younger outside of the family home. And around the age of 10, 11, that's when that full awareness of that started to come. And at that point, the marriage was breaking down again, and my mum had 2 more kids and she was going through menopause, which she didn't realise at the time. And now I'm in the stages of it, I realise how much it impacts. And I look back and I think, oh God, you poor woman, because she had no support with any of that. So she's then with another broken marriage, 4 kids by herself. That's a lot to contend with. I've had to raise 2 kids by myself, and I now look back and I'm like, but we were in a society where we didn't talk and emotions weren't processed healthily in the same way. So she did her best with the knowledge that she had, and that's all anyone can do. But I think Dr. Gabor Mate, who's massive on trauma, talks about how, how it's not just the trauma or the events themselves, but being alone with those traumas is where I guess the deeper impact happens. And I think my internal kind of view of what happened was all said something about me. So my dad not being present, my stepdad not engaging with me, my mum struggling to cope. It was all, I'm not enough, I'm not lovable. That is the core story. Even with all the women I work with, the core story is, am I enough? That's the core question. And of most men, right? If you look back to where everyone struggles. But I think that trauma and hugely significant life events can feed that story very deeply. So that unfolded, and as I hit my teenage years, my ability to cope with what was going on and being alone in those feelings, those emotions, the breakdown of all of that, I think I tried to find any way that I could to avoid, escape, get attention, get that validation,
get some relief.
And that led me down, a pretty destructive path.
Wow. So. This all started pretty young then.
Yeah.
Because you said your mum got remarried at 6, 7. You were.
Do
you have memories of your dad young when you were young? What's your earliest memory of him?
I don't really remember. I have quite a poor memory, and I've really wrestled with this. I remember significant events a lot and very little in between. And, I've tried to explore, is that the impacts of trauma? Because there's been a lot as life unfolded. Or do I just have poor memory? But the more I've studied into understanding trauma, the hippocampus, which holds your memory, shrinks. So it's probably linked to it.
Is that like a protection mechanism for the body? Does it purposely forget stuff then?
I get so, yeah, absolutely. But the physical impact of that on the body also causes physical. We know now, studies show that the impact of stress, trauma, etc., affects every function of the body. So and it also affects the prefrontal cortex and the wiring for that to develop healthily. So
wow.
It's probably a lot of brain damage going on. I'm constantly on a path of searching to how much that can actually heal. But I don't have massive memories of my dad. I saw him sporadically, but my main memories are him picking us up to see us. But he would pick us up and maybe take us to the park for a bit. I have maybe one. I don't know whether the memories are memories or from pictures. But what I do know is that he would take us to our nan's and he would go off for the whole day. So while my mum thought that my dad was spending time with me once in a blue moon, actually he picked us up, took us to our nan's, and he would disappear off and then come back. So it was very sporadic memories. I do remember sitting there waiting for him to turn up and him not showing up. He wasn't. There wasn't much connection.
The memory piece is quite interesting, isn't it? Because I always think this, am I really remembering that as a memory? Mm-hmm. Or am I recalling a story my mum and dad have told me about that time?
Mm-hmm. Memories are very dangerous.
It's odd, isn't it?
Because people swear by their own memories. And for me, this was a massive impact in terms of, especially with the sexual abuse, that there was a lot of internal conflict about, did I remember it right? Did it happen? Have I made the memory up? The only saving grace that I had is that someone else was the victim too at the same time. So I was able to corroborate that memory within my mind.
Do you start doubting yourself as well when others don't believe you, right? You know, when you say this happened to me, whether it's as awful as what happened to you or something not as bad, and no, it didn't. Don't be silly. That's not the root. You're making it up.
Right.
You start doubting yourself.
100%. Well, I've been in relationships that have been pretty toxic, and I've been on the receiving end of knowing an experience happened, but someone telling me so much that it didn't, that you do start to question your own sanity or your whole perception of the world. Yeah, it's has a huge impact.
Okay, so let's rewind it back a bit, and
Yeah.
then we'll carry on going. I'm trying to process everything.
I'm
trying to process everything you've just said. So you've got the kind of traditional, this is going to sound awful, but traditional trauma that's very prevalent in the Western world of parents breaking up.
Yeah.
Like my wife's parents broke up when she was relatively young as well.
Yeah.
She still wrestles with that at times.
Yeah.
There's things like that. And I feel like it's unfortunately quite common in the West, isn't it? That element of kind of breaking and I don't know if we truly understand. You probably do more than me. I've been pretty fortunate to have parents that are still together, and they're still together, which is a rarity, isn't it?
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it is, because I don't know if it's given the flip. Let's flip it. I don't know if it's given me a false sense of what a relationship
should look like.
Yeah, or is going to behave like, right? Because where I live is very different to where they live and grew up. The culture I'm living in is very different to the culture they live in and grew up. The times are different. So am I now searching, I always think this about myself and within our own relationship, am I now searching for a relationship that doesn't exist in the world that I live in?
I think it has the capacity to exist. And I think fundamentally, like I've really researched into this till the cows come home. And then you look at attachment theory. If you come from a securely attached family relationship or home, and you've seen relatively securely attached behavior within that dynamic, because people can still be together and it be very unhealthy, toxic, right? So if you've had that secure attachment, you're much more likely to go on and have securely attached successful relationships. But we are living in a massive society. It's funny, I was just listening to a podcast on the way over here. Paul Brunson, I don't know. Absolutely love him, and he's on Diary of a CEO. So I that podcast I just consume like anything. But he was talking about how society has changed over time and how we're looking for different things. So back in the day, we would look for security, and that was our main, what we were searching for. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So security and probably connection, that was it. Whereas now as a society, we're all trying to look to self-actualization, and that has meant that what women are looking for is different, that the whole, how women are, the variety, the amount of options. We were talking before about decision fatigue. But there's also so many distractions. So I do think it makes it more complex, but someone who has come from a secure base is much more likely to be able to have a successful relationship than, say, two people who have come from unsecure attachment.
I get it completely, yeah. I think the societal pressure is an interesting one as well. Like I think of mum and dad, the pressure from society that not to break up in that era, in that part of the world, was it's so huge. High that they kind of made shit work. Whereas now, like we know, especially currently with this identity crisis and everything going on with our youngsters, no matter what I decide to do or not decide to do, I know my friends and family are going to support me, right? Because there's this narrative of do what makes you happy, do what makes you happy, do what makes you happy. And as much as I buy into that, there's always a fear of it becoming a little bit reckless.
I think it has been in some ways, and quite egocentric in some ways, because it's really important to pursue what kind of is good for you and good for your well-being and good for your mental health. But if everyone is driven from the do what makes you happy, there's not that caveat without the reckless abandonment of thinking about the impact of anybody else as you do it. So yeah, absolutely. I think
it's trying to have that moral compass still, isn't it? Because if I do everything that made me happy, probably have no marriage left. I'd probably have no friends left. Do you understand what I mean? Like, 100%. Because the happiness is like a moment of joy, and you can get that from the wrong things as well as the right things. You've experienced that yourself.
That's it. And then it's the question of happiness. Is it do what pleases you and do what makes you happier to very different things. And what is happiness anyway? I think a lot of us are on this pursuit of happiness. And when you actually get that thing that you pursue, are you actually really happy? Or do you know what I mean? So yeah.
I've not been, in my experience, you know, from my experience being young, one thing I had that I was very fortunate with was unconditional love and a stable family. But that's all we had. No money, sometimes couldn't afford to eat when we came to England first, you know. So I didn't have all that kind of stuff, but I had this thing that I probably didn't value at the time.
Yeah.
It's only now that how I've grown up and who I've become, I can see that a lot of that's come from seeing this over here.
Yeah.
I find it so interesting because you can speak to 100 people that you think have had the same, even brothers and sisters, right, in the same family, have a different upbringing.
100%.
Same mum and dad, same household.
But there's that thing about nurture and nature, right? That constant question, and it's something that I constantly explore and try and work out which is which. And I think quite often it's a combination of two. You can have two kids born in the same home, same environment, with two very different personalities. So how the parents react to those children creates a very different perception for an experience for that child as well. You have the thing, you know, middle child syndrome and whatever, wherever your ranking is within that family and all of that. So yeah, it's so we're so complex.
It is, yeah.
As human beings, we are just really complex creatures in an ever evolving complex world. And I think that life was a lot easier when life was a lot simpler, you know, in terms of, but equally, if it was that great, we would have stayed there.
We wouldn't have progressed, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We also have this thing, I do it a lot, we have nostalgia, don't we, where we think back to something, but we remember it to be so much greater than it was. I have it a lot of time with films. So I'd be like, I might, you know, be like, to my missus is 4 years younger than me.
Yeah.
So I might be like, oh, did you ever watch that film growing up? No. Oh my God, you've not seen it. It's unbelievable. And we put it on. It's like close enough to fucking black and white, pixelated. It's awful. And I rewatch it and I think, fuck, I don't remember it being this shit. It was so good. But I think it probably wasn't the film. It was the time I was living in, the people that were around me.
Yeah.
So we got this funny thing. I read a quote. I read a page every morning, one from the Daily Stoic, one from the Daily Law by Robert Greene. And the Daily Law one said yesterday, and it resonates with what we're saying. It says, there's 3 stages to life, 3 lessons you learn in life. One lesson you learn from your parents, one lesson you learn from your schoolmasters, and then one lesson you learn from life, which contradicts the first 2. And I read that yesterday morning and I thought, fuck, that's good. Well, because it's true, isn't it? You grow up learning some stuff from your parents, then you go to school and they try and program you in a way that suits
then life just comes and smashes
and then life comes in and
pieces.
goes, well, none of that really makes any sense now, because over here is what's actually happening.
The thing is as well, like whenever we feel like we've landed on I think I understand it all. Life has this funny way of coming along and just, smashing that to pieces. And then you're like, So that saying, you know, the older you get, the more you realise how little you know. That is so true for me. It's,
I've said before to friends, like I find I've only really kind of been probably doing the self-awareness thing since 2020, since lockdown. Lockdown 1, where everything stopped and the competition stopped and chasing the jets and the money stopped. And I was like, right, what do I do in my life now? You know, like, and then
Who the hell am I?
Yeah, try and discover yourself.
Yeah.
I find that the more aware you become, and this is going to sound a bit weird, but almost sometimes the more unhappy you are.
It's a painful journey.
I kind of sometimes wish I was still ignorant to a lot of this stuff, because I'm doubting myself. I'm doubting every interaction I'm having. Not doubting, but questioning. What's the deep meaning behind this? When sometimes there is no fucking deep meaning. It's just a bottle of water. You know, it's just a pen. Do you understand what I mean? Like the pen's not trying to take you down or make you think about something.
Yeah. And I think that 100% that journey of self-discovery is an uncomfortable one, right? 100%. But if everything was so great and ignorance was so bliss, again, like I just said a little bit, why would the world have evolved? Why would you have had that seeking? Why would you have had that drive? So is that you looking back with a romanticized memory again, going, that was so bliss, because that you're not going to look for something if you already have it, right? So I think that I try and kid myself sometimes. I look at what's it called? It's on Netflix, and it's about autism, Love on the Spectrum.
Yeah. I've not watched it, but I've seen
absolutely brilliant.
on there.
Absolutely brilliant. And I watch it, and I just think, I would so love to be you. I would so love for my mind to be that simple, that quiet, and just see the world in such a simplistic way. But I'm not. I'm a complex creature, and my life, the ignorance didn't really get me where I wanted to go anyway. Otherwise I wouldn't have tried to seek another path. But it is an uncomfortable journey. There's no denying. And then, like you said, but what I know is the depths that you go to, the richness of life that you will experience at points because of that. I always say it's like paddling in the shallow of the sea. Yeah, say you're on holiday on a beach, paddling in the shallow. It's beautiful. You look out, it's beautiful scenery. But have you ever been scuba diving?
No.
Okay, when you go scuba diving and see the most incredible, beautiful fish, and it's almost like you enter into another realm. It's like everything goes, and it's just the most incredible experience. And I feel like life is like that. Okay, it's scary. There's at points where I'm like, I feel like I'm going to choke and die and not breathe, and I'm going to drown to death. But oh my gosh, I get immersed in this experience, and there's nothing that can touch that. And I never would have got to experience that if I just kept my feet paddling in the. Do you know what I mean?
I get the metaphor, and the analogy. It's wicked. We're going to take it back a little bit. Let's go back a little bit, because we've gone off on a tangent, which is fine.
I'm good at that.
So you experience a breakup with your parents pretty young. Mum remarries or tries to get into a new relationship. You then move. What are you like at this stage when you get to sort of school? Are you lashing out and misbehaving? What was the school period like? What you like?
I wasn't lashing out and misbehaving in primary. As I went into secondary, I mean, every school report I've ever had says, like, lovely, but needs to concentrate more, needs to focus more, could not. And I have always been good with people. Like there's something that I've definitely, that's maybe, people talk about superpowers or their gift. I've definitely always been able to connect to people. So I don't think I was massively disliked by the teachers. I think they got sick of me, and some of them took me under their wing. Again, I don't have very good memories, but I started to become, as my life started to unfold, I started to become more reckless. And I look back now and I don't even know how I got GCSEs, because I don't ever remember picking up a book. I know that I was asked to sit at the back of class for quite a few lessons that I attended. As long as you shut up and don't distract other people. I was definitely bunking off and, over the fence smoking cigarettes or a bit of weed or whatever. Yeah. So I definitely got into a few fights. But on a whole, school it seems very small and a blur to me. It was really weird, because a lovely girl that I was friends with at school, I know I was because I have pictures with her. And when she asked to meet up, she came to Bournemouth, and she had all these memories of me that I knew she was my friend. And when I heard her laugh, I knew it on such a deep level, but I have no memories of these times that she was talking about. I had a real impact on her, apparently, and apparently I protected her from getting bullied. No recollection whatsoever.
So interesting. You're this memory thing with you.
I just remember specific things, like when I nearly got caught because I was going to get kicked out, I think, or in trouble, and I ripped my whole leg open from jumping over a barbed wire fence because I think I was going to be caught smoking weed or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all a bit chaotic. I think because there were so many things going on out of the school environment. Yeah, it wasn't.
You said about smoking weed there. So obviously you get to a certain age and you start dabbling in alcohol and entry level
Yeah.
recreational drugs.
Yeah.
How bad does that get?
Bad. Yeah. I started weed at 12, and by the
12?
by the age of 16 and a half, maybe just turning 17, I had a crack and heroin addiction. So yeah, it escalated pretty rapidly over those years. I think I just got more and more immersed into a world that just became so chaotic and dark, and it was like it was almost like I didn't have control over any of it. And I think I lost a lot of the self-hatred by that point had run so deep. And I'd had more experiences at 14 and a half. I ran away from my mum's, refused to go back there. Within that, I was the victim of an assault that I ended up pregnant from. So I ended up living with my dad and stepmom for a year. Although I didn't have any interaction with my dad about 5 times within that whole year. But I stayed there and I was allowed to do whatever I wanted. But yeah, I had a termination off the back of that at 14 and a half. So I think just everything fed into such a deep level of self-hatred that I got to a point where I had no care or regard for myself and had completely shut off much emotion for caring about anything. Yeah.
That's mad.
I know, you wouldn't think of it looking at me now, would you? Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible that you can talk about it.
Yeah.
Kind of as openly as you are.
Yeah.
I can see the emotion in your eyes, but
yeah, sometimes it hits me. Sometimes I can talk about it and it literally does nothing. It's like I'm reading someone else's story. And other times, I think recently there's some things that have come back up because it has long lasting effects, right?
Of course.
So yeah, there's some times where I speak about it where it's, those feelings are.
The people around you that kind of did care for you,
Yeah.
you might not have seen at the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm guessing they were either weren't aware or were trying to get through to you and you were just kind of blocking them out and carrying on.
Absolutely. I mean, my mum tried it in all her ways, but our relationship had broken down so much. By the time I ran away from home, I refused to go back home. So our relationship was very fragmented. My stepmom, she tried in her own way, but she more took on a friend role. So I went from my mum, who was quite strict with her boundaries, to then having none. My dad gave me, a bag of weed, king size wrist, and a packet of cigarettes for my 15th birthday. Mm-hmm. That was his level of interaction with me. And my stepmom just allowed me the freedom, and I was allowed to smoke cigarettes there and smoke weed. So for me, it was a complete contrast. And again, we were in a society we didn't talk. Mm-hmm. So at that period, I now look back and there is a deep level of sadness because no one delved into how did I end up pregnant at 14 and a half? Like, where was I for that week that I'd run away? So
that had never been dealt with.
No, never dealt with. So I and even social services, as soon as I was placed there, it was that gone. So the time I started having people that were really trying to reach out to me, was when the mess really kicked in, and I ended up in prison for the first time and stuff like that. And then my mum tried her best to help in whatever way she could.
So by 16 and a half, you're obviously on extremely hard drugs, and you're burying your head. You're obviously hiding from some pain. You're trying to get some relief, and you got caught up in this nobody wants me kind of self-harming almost cycle.
Yeah.
What happens from then to prison? How do you end up in prison?
Because once you're addicted, when I first was given heroin, I didn't know that you could be physically addicted in the way. Like, I didn't have enough. It's not like we had access to the internet in the way that we do now. I didn't have enough knowledge about it. And I just thought, it happened to weak people, or kind of I just didn't know enough about it. So after a few weeks of someone staying with me and giving it to me every day, and they went, that addiction was so powerful. The physical, I literally thought I was dying, but also the relief that it gives you. You become so locked into that, like I said, your lack of, I've been given strong, good morals, right? That's one thing my mum was quite big on, is drilling those into me. But it's like they go, I think you feel so angry with yourself, with the world, with everybody in it. And I was also, I'd been in domestic abuse relationship by that point, and there was so many layers of adding on that I hold no value. So it was just about survival by that point. And to survive, you need money. And I didn't hold out. I went to school, college to do performing arts, dropped that out after about 4 months because I always wanted to be like on stage or something. So dropped that out, tried to get a job, couldn't maintain that. I couldn't maintain anything because my life was utter chaos. So then you have to survive. Mm-hmm. So that another, from 17 was the first time I went to prison, and 21 was the last time I went in. Within that time, I went in 5 times and 5 rehabs. So yeah, it was, yeah.
So quite petty stuff almost.
Yeah, most of it was. I looked at my charge sheets the other day because me and my son were
framed or something. I don't memory.
No, because it's actually something I've felt a lot of deep shame about at points. I've tried so hard to give back to society because I felt like I'd drained and taken so much. There was a real deep guilt to it. But yeah, 42 charges, and a lot of it was theft and fraud and possession and carrying an offensive weapon, and so nothing massively major. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible to hear.
Yeah. It's weird when I talk about it.
What's it like at 17 years old, a female in prison? What was that first experience like?
Terrifying.
Scary.
Oh, terrifying. I don't come from that world. Like, you can hear how I talk. And I mean, I didn't used to talk like that then. I definitely went through my kind of hood rat phase.
We all been there.
Yeah. But yeah, it was terrifying. It was, I cried from the moment they told me in the dock to the whole way they took me, and I got sent to Holloway the first time. And heard so many things about Holloway. So it was terrifying. And I got put in a dorm with a lot older women who'd obviously been there a long time or had been to prison before. And they all told me I needed to detox. And they said to me, "Oh, you don't want to go to the hospital wing to detox. Like, there's real lunatics on there." And I was so terrified by the stories that they told me. I said to the wing officer, I don't want to go to the hospital wing. They said, like, that's fine. So I stayed in the cell. That night, I'm waiting for my medication to come around. No one turns up. So I'm ringing the buzzer, and someone eventually comes, and I said, no one's brought my medication. They were like, "What are you on about?" I said, "My medication to help me withdraw." They said, "Well, you refuse to go to the hospital wing, so you're getting none." So I had to withdraw in a room with 3 other women and stay deadly still and silent because I was too scared to wake them up. But that is the most horrendously painful and torturous thing to do when you're withdrawing. Yeah, it was torture. I had my jewelry stolen off me. I was playing pool with a woman who asked me to play pool with her. And she asked me what I was in for. And then she started telling me, and she told me like she'd just gone to the shop, and apparently her and someone, her partner, had murdered someone, buried his body under concrete. And the concrete, it was so hot that summer that the concrete had split, the stench had come up, and that's how they got caught. I thought she was just telling me to like scare me. No, she actually was in there for that. So yeah, it was a absolutely mad, that question of like, how did my life get here? How did I end up here? Yeah. But then it becomes normalized. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So we're in and out, in and out, in and out. You get to 21 years old was the last time you went in.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me a bit about the period, the kind of catalyst that you thought, right, enough is enough now. I need to sort my fucking life out. I need to get help, or I need to sort this out. Because obviously that period between 17 and 21 sounds like it was in and out of the same cycle.
Yeah. Although 5 rehabs. So I kept on trying from the beginning, but never lasted longer than 3 weeks. So I think the massive catalyst for this was that I had a long enough space away from the chaos for my brain to, I was forced to sit with my emotions. I mean, when you're sat in a prison cell, and when I first went in, you had 23-hour bang up with no TV, no radio, no books, nothing. And so there's a lot of time to sit with yourself, but this time it was a bit easier because there was TV, there was books, and I was in for long enough. I formed quite a good friendship in there, and I think that massively helped. So I think there were, seeds get sown along the way, right? And that's really important. And at some point, there's enough space and time for someone else to pour some water and a bit of sunlight to come in that helps that seed kind of burst through. And I feel like it was probably that to a certain extent. But the day I came out, after I was in for 7.5 months, like utterly convinced I was not going to go back to that. And within 3 days, one night, I was back in the most horrendous hell of a night. And a few days after that, someone had given me some more drugs, and I'd made a decision to kill myself. I got on my knees. I was so desperate. I thought, I can't go back to that life. I can't. So it's either this or I kill myself. But I was in so much conflict because of the impact it would have had on other people. I'd already had a suicide attempt at 18, where I was hospitalised for a month after that. So I knew the trauma and impact that it had. I didn't want to do it again. So I was wrestling with it. And I'd say it was a bit of a spiritual experience, whatever people want to believe or whatever that is, that whether it's a spiritual experience with myself, but I had a moment of blissful peace. And I don't think I'd ever encountered what peace felt like. And in that moment I experienced it. It was like it washed over me. And I just had this real strong sense that I was done and everything was going to be okay. And I never touched drugs after that point. So yeah, that was a massive catalyst.
I mean, it sounds like along that journey it got pretty dark as well. if you're thinking like, this is it, I can't live anymore.
Yeah. And the reality is, we look at that pivotal point and we think, and then you think, oh my gosh, it's all going to be okay. It's all going to be amazing now. That's so far from the truth. It's unreal. It's unreal. But it was huge.
It's amazing you can laugh about it now, though.
Well, yeah,
you laugh or cry, isn't it?
Well, this is it. I've done enough crying, and some days I still do. Some days I can connect with that and feel a deep sense of sadness, because along the way there's been a lot of stuff to grieve and a lot of loss, and but yeah, most of the time.
Appreciate you sharing that. That's very, very deep. Trying to process it myself in my head. Oh, I mean, okay, so how do you, because obviously that's just the beginning of the journey, right? Getting clean. You've got this decade of roller coaster of emotions and trauma that you're now carrying, all the way from the first split up of your mum and dad to all this stuff.
Yeah.
How do you then deal with that? How have you unpacked that? Professional help, or what have you done? How have you kind of?
Yeah, there's been a huge contribution of things. I moved to Bournemouth a few months after coming out of prison, and I was 4 months pregnant. I fell pregnant the day I came out of prison, and I think that pregnancy, I'd made a decision that I wasn't going to go through with it, but I was offered a place in the YMCA in Bournemouth on exactly the same day as the termination. And if I didn't take it, I could be waiting months to get another space. And the termination was the last day that I was allowed to get a termination. And I had a real huge choice to make. And I chose to come to Bournemouth. So from that point, I immersed myself definitely in the recovery scene, going to support groups, but I accessed mental health support. I got therapy. And I started my journey of personal development at that point as well, and spiritual seeking. So I think a combination, all of those drove me on a journey. But it's been, it's not been the climbing the mountain to the pinnacle. It's been like climbing a mountain, think that you've reached the top, and then you see about 20 other valleys and mountains.
Slide back down.
Yeah.
Well, it's a never-ending journey, isn't it?
Oh, gosh.
Doesn't matter kind of what you've been through or not been through.
Yeah.
That self-development piece is till you die.
100%. And I think for the first few years, maybe a good long period, I thought that it was about the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So if I just dealt with the addiction, then I'd be okay. And so it was about my thinking around drugs and that sort of stuff, and righting my wrongs to people I'd harmed, and looking at kind of my behaviors. There's a lot of self-introspection that goes on within that program. But I guess there was no connection for me about that. The trauma was the driving factor for that addiction, right? And I know there's a lot of different schools of thought with all of this, and Gabor Mate has really shifted a lot, or come in line with my perception.
He says some amazing things about addiction as well,
right.
About it not being an abnormality in it,
right?
About being the most human thing out
there.
A
trauma response, because our nervous system cannot cope, and it looks to find a way to be able to survive.
Yeah.
So, that understanding came later on. So I after about 9.5 years, I stepped away from the recovery circles, not because it just felt the right time. I needed to go in a different direction, and I'm so grateful for what it gave me. But as my understanding of things and myself grew, that fell away. And then it was more a spiritual pursuit path. And so it isn't ever unfolding. But what I came to the complete conclusion is the relationship of myself was at the core of all of it. How I viewed myself in this world defined every other choice that I made. And that showed up again and again and again in relationships, and how those unfolded and manifested. It was like the penny eventually dropped, because there was so much pain within those relationships, and I kept on picking relationships that were very toxic and nearly broke me. And I had to ask myself, like, you're the common denominator here. Like, what is the true core problem? And
let's talk about relationships, those relationships especially that you talk about. So you've had some toxic ones, right? We were talking offline.
Yeah.
And do you keep going for one type of person? Is that what it is? Or was it more the fact that what you said a minute ago about valuing yourself that was causing the issue in those relationships?
I think it's a combination. I think how you view yourself plays a huge part in the choices that you make. So for me, I had a strong belief that no one normal, in abbreviated commas, because what is normal, right? But no one who hadn't had my history would accept me or be able to love me. I had a belief that I was never going to be enough for anyone like that. And that was such a strongly held belief. But I also know what I've understood and researched till the cows come home about understanding relationships is our nervous systems go to what's familiar, not what's right, not the right choice, but the familiar that then our nervous system determines is safe. So what was familiar and safe, therefore safe to me in my nervous system, was emotionally unavailable, emotion distant, or abusive, or so they were all what my whole nervous system. So I wasn't consciously making choices that much when I was drawn to those relationships. And there's the whole concept of trauma bonding and all of that sort of stuff. And I tended to pick people who, and then you look at attachment theory, I was definitely very anxiously attached. So I tended to be attracted to avoidance, who would completely confirm the story and belief system. And that whole self-fulfilling prophecy comes in is, you know, what you believe you're worth and what you look for. Yeah. So I think all of that.
I mean, for anyone that's listening now that might be going through something similar, is there any signs that you look out for, red flags you look out for now if you're dating someone, that from the off you're like, this person isn't for me?
Oh, absolutely. I think that a lot of women don't give themselves enough time to get to know a person and see how they are. They just go off of that. There's a physical attraction. They look for that spark and they think that that means something. And while that's important to have, if you don't create a degree of distance, you immerse yourself within that relationship based off of that without getting to see. And then you have blinkers that come on massively. Mm-hmm. What I definitely look for is words and actions matching up, integrity. I think that one of the biggest pieces of work, though, that I had to do with myself, because there'll be red flags for me that aren't red flags for another person.
I was going to say that.
Right? Mm-hmm. So there's the generic ones, like how do they treat other people?
What are their waiter or waitress?
Right? How are their family systems made up? What are their friendships like? Do they have consistency in careers or whatever? There's a lot of the fundamental ones, but there's also ones that are massive triggers for a certain person. So there's those. So doing the work on yourself and discovering what's right for you and your nervous system and your needs and your value system, because even the thought of picking someone that matched my value system, that wouldn't have even come into my mind. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't even have a clue what my value system was. I hadn't done enough exploratory work. So I just went off, oh my gosh, I'm really attracted to this person and I like a few things. And they do that. But I didn't look at the whole picture. I'd find one or two things that seemed really great that fit in with my narrative, and I would focus on them and ignore everything else. So yeah, I don't think there's this list of red flags that you can say, like, obviously the big ones don't go there, but that there's a lot more subtle ones about who you are as a person, what your values are, and whether they align.
I think the values thing is really important. And I think there's a lot of people, 90% of people probably walking around without knowing what their values are. Because it's quite a difficult 100%. Question to ask yourself. I've 100%. Done it with a therapist. You know, she told me to write down my values, like my core 5 values. And I was like, well, I can't. She said, okay, well, write down things that matter to you.
Yeah.
So I wrote them down and then we narrowed it down. You know, is it this or this? Is it this or this? And we got it down to like 3 or 5. Mm-hmm. So now when I'm making decisions, I try my hardest to kind of revert back and go, right, yes, no. It's like a chart, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is this taking me close to where I want to be? Yeah. Yes or no? No, don't do it. Yes, cool. Da-da-da-da. And then the final question will be, is it, if I've got no other way to go, is it in line with my values?
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
If it's yes, do it. If it's no, maybe don't do it.
Right. And it's such a powerful tool.
I can't always get it right, don't get me wrong, but I'm trying my hardest.
Neither am I.
I'm still making shit decisions.
Don't we all? I think that's part of the human experience. I think the other thing that I've massively learned is about having huge levels of self-compassion for how messy the journey is and how messy we are in it, right? So, yeah.
Jay Shetty, I watched him say something about love and falling in love. And I thought it really resonated. He said that a lot of the time when we fall in love with someone, we don't fall in love with that person. We fall in love with who we think we could make that person become.
100%.
So we think, you know, they're not doing the dishes, but they would, I think, if we got down the line. Or they're not, whatever it might be important to you.
It's that falling in love with potential. And I definitely absolutely guilty of it.
And then the other part was the belief system, the values.
Yeah.
You know, like, I will get angry if you don't follow my value system.
Yeah.
But who am I? Like, why would you follow my value system?
Right.
My upbringing.
Who says mine's right?
Yeah, like,
do you know?
Yeah, that's right to me, or that's how a relationship should behave, or that's how a partner should behave. But that doesn't mean the same the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. And again,
so difficult, though, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is. But what is easier is doing the work on yourself to understand your values, especially for people who have come from trauma and unhealthy relationships. If they're going on and wanting to ever have a chance of having healthy, sustainable ones, you have to do the inner work of understanding your own and pick people that are in line with those value systems. Because one of the biggest levels of conflict that comes out of any relationship is where the value systems are completely not aligning, and one person is trying to drag the other person, and the other person's kicking and screaming, or they're not valuing who you are and your values, and that does huge amounts of damage to a person's self-esteem. And
I just think we're not taught enough about it growing up in school. Like, you know, I discovered the 5 love languages in 2020 or 2021. Right. So
you're a newbie.
And it completely blew my mind, because it makes you understand, you know, if for argument's sake, most guys are, let's say their primary language is physical touch, and second is, I'm generalizing, is acts of service. Yeah. Right. So we like to be physically close to someone. That's how we feel loved. And we like people doing shit for us. Yeah.
That's how we feel loved. Acts of service is quite high. Yeah.
So mine primary is physical touch, secondary is acts of service. Now, if my wife's are quality time and
words of affirmation.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I wake up in the morning and I'm leaving, and she might go, "Oh, you look really nice." And I'm like, "Fuck, are you talking about?" And I leave the house because I'm like, "I know I look nice. What are you talking about?" You know, like, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I might go and give her a hug, and she might not like touching, so she's like, "I'll get off," you know, but not just with me, but with everyone.
Yeah.
We can't love it. Like, we can't understand why the partner doesn't feel the love from us. Yeah. Because we're trying to love them in a way that we accept love.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they don't accept love the same way.
Absolutely.
It's such a tough, complex thing. And obviously then the other part is like long-term relationships. Crawley and I have been together over a decade. Wow. We're not the same people.
Yeah, you both grow.
She was a teenager.
Yeah.
She's in her 30s now. Like, she's not the same woman. Yeah. I'm not the same man. Yeah. We probably don't have the same value systems. Mm-hmm. We probably don't accept love the same way as we did in that era that we do in this decade.
100%.
So actually, you know, if you're fortunate, you grow together. But most people grow apart.
100%. Because also going back to the thing that I said that Paul Brunson was talking about is, because there is such a thing about self-actualization with everybody, there is a lot of people that are growing, and unless you're growing in the same direction, how can you? Because it's like walking down a path, isn't it? You're both walking down the same path, and then one doesn't want to walk anymore, or one's done with walking. Like, they're just, I'm quite happy to plot up and build my house here. I don't want to walk anymore. Whereas another one, I want to walk in this direction. The distance between the two is going to get wider and wider, isn't it?
But this is the part where my head goes a little bit. And I've spoke to the therapist about this as well. Like, this stuff wasn't around when my parents were growing up.
No.
Either this level of knowledge wasn't around,
no,
or they just didn't give a shit about it, or whatever. Mm-hmm. They just didn't know about it. They weren't aware of it.
Yeah.
And they just seemed a bit happier. Because the reason I say that is because it feels like we've got so many excuses now to walk away.
Yeah.
You know, even that excuse I just gave, "Oh, we've just grown apart." Like, and it's so acceptable.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do we do then now? Do we knock it on the head? Or do we learn to re-love each other?
Right.
Or are we trying to put a square peg for a round hole? And is it time to...
I think it's massively about learning to work. Most people had the concept and the belief that you work at it. Yeah, back then. That doesn't exist in the same way now. So all you can do is work with someone who's willing to work, and make sure that you're the person who's willing to do the work. And that's something I definitely give myself props for, is whatever relationship I've ever been in, I've been willing to do the work. I've just been with people who haven't been. Mm-hmm. Then you need to walk away, because that causes too much destruction. If someone, especially when someone's got a whole lot of trauma themselves and that's being poured onto you. But if someone isn't willing to put in the work to reconnect and go, okay, how can we reconnect? One person can't completely carry that relationship. So as long as you've got someone who's willing to like
Fight
go, okay, yeah, then yeah.
That makes sense, yeah. So if you're both willing to try, you keep trying.
You keep trying.
I've always kind of been under the impression with everything in life, whether that's work, relationships, friendships, that the good times outweigh the bad times.
Mm-hmm.
If the good times outweigh the bad times, I try and carry on fighting.
It's the 80-20 rule.
Yeah, if the bad times outweigh the good times, I think it's time for change. That doesn't necessarily 100%. Mean breaking up or changing who you're friends with, but something's got to change.
100%. I use the 80-20 rule for most things in life. If 80% of the time it's bringing 80% of meeting 80% of the needs, then all good. If the balance starts tipping the other way, then absolutely something needs to shift and change. And if it's not going to change, then you have to do something or make a decision based off of that. So yeah, I try to live by that. I just need to find someone who thinks the same way.
It will come. The universe will align. Hi guys, while I've got you, I wanted to announce an exciting new sponsor for the show. For those that know me or listen regularly, you'll know that I'm a big combat sports fan, and some of my favourite kit to use when training is by a brand called Venom. Fellow combat sports fans will know Venom as the UFC's official outfitting apparel partner. They have clothing and equipment for MMA, boxing, Muay Thai and BJJ. However, what I'm most excited about is their new lifestyle range, some of which I'll be rocking on the show. It's a privilege to partner with a global brand such as Venom. Will it make me a better athlete? Probably not, but at least I'll look good doing it. You've got 2 kids now, right?
I do, yeah.
Mother of 2 kids. So talk to me a little bit about, you're now a mum, right?
Sorts.
Is there things now that make a bit more sense of what your mum and stepmum might have done growing up that you wouldn't have understood until you had a child?
Yeah, 100%.
And are you, as a mother, a little bit overprotective because you know what you've been through?
I wouldn't say I'm overprotective because I've tried to strike a balance because, again, I had one end and then I had the complete opposite. I've tried to strike a balance, but whether that balance is right, again, I left home at 14 and a half, yeah? So if you look at that, really, especially in the teenage years, I'm like, I have no clue what I'm doing and no model to go off. Mm-hmm. So that's been really hard to navigate. I have found parenting hard, full stop. I think a woman shouldn't be doing it alone. And when I say fully single-handed, I mean fully single-handed. I mean financially, like physically, practically, in every sense of the word.
Wow.
Which is, it's a lot.
Is that
for
a
one.
choice?
Not actively a choice, no. That it just, unfortunately, because of the fathers that I chose. I mean, my eldest, his dad was from the chaos before I went into prison, and then just one encounter after that led to him. So, and he was definitely, his life was definitely still in a chaos that I couldn't be part of, but there was always opportunity for him to, but where his life has taken him, he didn't step up. And my second son, that he was planned, and literally around the time that I found out I was pregnant, he had come from a similar history to me, and he went back to that and has still been in that chaos. So no, I never want to do it on my own at all. But in terms of protecting them, and if your life is stable, then you're welcome to access. Mm-hmm. If it's not, then you're not. Because I've had to protect my children in that
boys,
way.
They'll be protecting you, Mumsy, don't worry. I'm sure they'll look after you.
Yeah.
You're such a strong woman. I'm happy to be here with you.
Oh, thank you.
Honestly.
Thank you.
It's incredible to hear.
Thank you.
I've lost my trail of thought now.
We were talking about boys having them, what it's been like.
Yeah, children.
Understanding my parents, definitely. I think looking back, especially with my mum, because probably that's the biggest point of reference I've got to go by. That's how I've been able to extend huge amounts of compassion and understanding to her. because of how many times I've definitely screwed up as a parent. And I always joke about the fact that I need to earn enough money so I can pay for therapy for my kids when they're older. I know how hard it is, and I know how the unhealed, especially my eldest, he's had to grow with me.
Mm-hmm.
Bear in mind, like, I've come out of prison, I've fallen pregnant. 9 months later, I'm in Bournemouth, and I've become a mum, and I'm on my own in a shared room, like in a hostel. And I am a mess, postnatal depression. He's had to walk through, both of them have had to walk through a lot of journeys with me. And that, as much as I've always tried my best and I've tried to heal, that's going to have had an impact.
Mm-hmm.
2 kids without their dads in sight. I never wanted that. So that's going to have an impact. So yeah, I have a lot more compassion.
It will. But as those guys get older, I know one of them's pretty older now anyway, but when they start having their awareness journey, it will make sense.
Yeah, I think it already does.
Do you know what I mean?
They're quite emotionally intelligent kids. They
probably
are.
have to be. Yeah. You have to be to an extent, don't you? Like,
yeah.
I know we talk about like trauma they've been through, but if you wanted to create a kid that was strong and that was patient and that was thinking, you'd have to put them through some of those situations
100%.
to be able to become that person.
Yeah, 100%. So, and I've drilled it into them. I'm like, I am. If I can't find the right man, I am sure as hell going to raise 2. They are going to be the type of men that I would have wanted. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm massive on. I'm sending these men out into the world to have relationships with women, and I have such a fierce heart for, like men as well, but kind of women being broken and their self-esteem. That's what all my career is based on, right? I want to make sure that the kids that the men that I send out, have a lot of respect for women's hearts and have a lot of self-reflection on how they're showing up in the world.
It's important, yeah. Is there anything, Natalie, in your life, is there one thing that particularly stands out where you wish you could have done something different? One particular thing. I know there's probably a lot in there that you might have changed, but if there's one thing that's still stuck with you where you wish you could amend or wish you could take back or change?
That's a really hard one because
it's the first thing that will come into your head. You're like, there's 50 things in my head.
I'm not gonna lie. Is there
one that stands out that you kind of going to take to the grave with you where you think?
No, it's
good in a way, I suppose.
I'm always torn between, like, all my experiences have made me. I wouldn't be without my kids, without those decisions. So they're incredible. Wouldn't be without them. So, but on the other hand, I have this other thing that I also might be a way more successful individual. I might have not. Would I like to turn back the clock and not have to have experienced the extensive amounts of trauma? 100%. Mm-hmm. But it has led me, and I think we have to use our experiences to make the best out of it that we can, and see if we can have an impact in the world because of it. But I would go back and have a super loving, secure, rich dad who loved my mum and loved us well. And it's just, have it. Yeah. So no, I don't think there's anything, that I could go back. There's not one thing that sticks out.
I think that's good in a way because you kind of accepted everything.
Yeah, I guess so.
When I ask that question sometimes to people, you get different types of people. You get someone that has still stuck with something that deeply hurts them that they've not been able to really process. You can tell because they're regretting and they're going to take it to the grave. Yeah. And then you get a person maybe similar to you that doesn't really regret any of it, the good, bad, or the ugly, because you'd arguably, if you went back and changed all your mistakes, you wouldn't exist.
I wouldn't exist the way that I do.
Yeah.
If you ask me, would I go back and do any of it differently? There's huge amounts that I would do differently, but I have definitely done enough work of healing to come to a place of acceptance for the choices that I've made, because Maya Angelou says, do your best until you know better. And when you know better, do better. So
I love that.
Yeah. I would have changed loving myself from day dot. If I could have been given that knowledge, that's the one thing. I think that's why I go out into the world and I try and like help women learn to fiercely love and accept who they are, because I think once you get that, it changes things.
No, I agree. You've created quite a lot of, I mean, I've got a few here, but you mentioned one before the show. I've put creator of trauma-informed program Find Your Freedom, co-creator of Finding Freedom Women's Collective, co-creator of Insecure No More, The Retreat.
Yeah.
What are these things? Are they programs that women can go on? Are they physical, online?
So the Women's Collective is a Facebook group, but we do monthly free online meetups, and that's just a space holding. We normally have a few prompts that you could use for journal prompts afterwards, but they prompt conversation, all to do with the healing journey of women healing from toxic, abusive relationships or trauma and low self-esteem. So it's all focused around that. So they're free because I've always want to make sure that there's something that's accessible for people that don't have the ability to pay for things. And I know that I had that in my journey, and that was really important. I think having community and having a tribe of other people that are trying to heal is massively important. And then the retreats, there's Relationship Ready and Insecure No More. So they are an extension of that. So they're 3-day retreats where we deep dive into the healing journey of understanding relationships, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, but
physical, like you go somewhere with them.
Yeah, we physically go. Yeah, it's East Sussex, and we're definitely looking in the next year or so about doing ones abroad as well. So yeah, amazing. Looking forward to that.
Any psychedelics? No,
not
that kind of retreat.
No, not that kind. not that kind of retreat. I have explored into that myself and kind of.
Have you done any?
I've never talked about it publicly before, but I have. I went on an ayahuasca journey.
Did you?
Yeah.
Fair play, straight at the top.
Yeah, because I just hit such a. I think it was after listening to Gabor Mate saying that he had, and in my brain I went, well, if he has, then it's okay, because he's like my granddad. So
Where did you go? South America somewhere? Or?
No, the UK.
Oh, you did it here? Okay.
Yeah.
I have some friends, some that have been on here and some that I hang around quite a lot that go regularly.
Yeah. I don't know if I could
Costa
do
Rica
it.
Or something.
Don't know if I could do it regularly.
Because it's
yeah. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of judgments about it because it's psychedelic. It's not. If you want a fun time, I wouldn't do that. And I knew that. And for 2 years, I was really like a bit resistant to doing it. I was scared, obviously, because of my history. I was in the church field for a long time, so there was a lot of kind of conditioning with that and having to separate that. So I went through a real journey, but I got to a point where I just needed another level of healing. I think the impact that trauma has had on my whole system. I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia after a car crash. I have battled on and off with, I guess, my hormones, which has been linked to depression. And I just knew I needed a different bit of a shift.
Did it help?
Yes, it did. It absolutely shifted something. But I think I understand why people go repeatedly. It's not a one-time fix, but there were knowings and understandings that I got from it that definitely really shifted a few things.
And you've not since wanted to try, like, say, DMT or mushrooms or anything of that kind of ilk?
So microdosing I've done a little bit of just to help regulate brain chemistry.
I have friends that live on that.
Yeah.
They've come off antidepressant tablets and they live on like psilocybin, like very small doses.
Very small doses, yeah. I'm not someone who has any desire to get out of my own head. And actually, those journeys are quite challenging. Like, ayahuasca was challenging to the core. It was a very uncomfortable experience, but worth it. I definitely... It's not, but I think you have to be absolutely ready. You have to know within every inch of your being that you're ready for it.
I mean, it's been calling me, not necessarily ayahuasca, but a psychedelic trip for probably since 2020. And I have friends that go every year to Portugal and they're like, come and do this psilocybin retreat with us. and I just keep bottling it. I booked it once
Yeah.
and I bottled it. I don't know if I want to be in my head without being able to escape. Like, because you can't leave, right? As in, it's not
You
like you
can't.
can just turn it off and get off. I'm getting off. Turn it
Right.
off.
And this is why I say about being ready. I think that when you're ready, you'll know. And you won't have that. I think I've done so much work at going so deep into kind of my shadows, those hidden parts of me, that I've learned to become so comfortable with the thoughts in my own head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they can get that, they're like, if someone actually listened in with headphones to the thoughts in my mind at times, I probably would have been sectioned.
Yeah.
You know?
I always say that if someone could hear what goes on in here, I'd probably be in jail or somewhere.
Right,
Because
100%.
it's weird in there.
100%. But people don't talk. And I think that's why I'm so real and raw about that stuff, because I want people to understand, because we all think we're alone with these dark thoughts, with these darker parts of ourselves, with the disturbed thoughts that pop up. And we attach ourselves thinking, I remember really deeply one day, I drove past someone and they had relapsed into addiction, and my head thought a really, really dark thought. At this point, I really believed that I was my thoughts. My thoughts were me. I attached myself to them so much. I went home and I cried for about 2 hours. I couldn't stop crying because I just thought, you are just a horrible, horrible person. I can't believe that your brain would think something like that. And then I learned to accept that, thoughts are just thoughts. You can't have control over them. You can have control what you attach to when the thoughts come up. And that was a really freeing thing. But yeah, we all have dark thoughts. And I think the more that we attach to them, that's the more dangerous it can become and the more dark it can become. Yeah.
Do you find that you're kinder to yourself now after all this self-healing?
A huge amount. I mean, to go from someone who had self-harm, tried to kill themselves, had so much self-hatred, to someone who, yeah, sure, on some days, like there's some parts of me would I like to change, absolutely, but I accept them. I understand that they're part of me, that I understand that, I can only do so much in terms of trying to heal myself, and some bits will heal in time, some bits may never go, and that's okay. But there's another part of myself that I've learned to really fiercely, deeply love. And as a whole, yeah, I really deeply love who I am, apart from when I'm hormonal. It's the only time.
Okay, so once a month is a problem.
Well, it's not even once a month. I'm perimenopausal, so it's all over the place.
It's good. It's good though. Do you find, like, obviously you're doing so much work with women, right? Mm-hmm. Are these women that require this help, is that a growing population or not? As in, like, are we getting worse or are we getting better? Do you understand what I'm trying to say there?
Yeah, I do.
You find more and more women are coming forward with these things that you're working on?
Absolutely. However, is that because it's becoming more normalized in society that you seek help, or is it that the problem is growing? Mm. And I think that there's a lot of studies on both sides, so conflicting messages, and what's the truth? I don't know. I would say I know that domestic abuse is massively on the rise.
It is it?
It's hugely on the rise. So that would indicate that there's more of that, but there is also
I wonder why.
I don't know.
I don't know. Insensitively.
Are we wired?
Curious.
Are we wired for society how it is? I don't know. I feel in some ways society has moved way too quickly, and
it's overstimulating, maybe.
Yeah, I think we're becoming more fractured as society. We're becoming more individualistic in the way that even our family units are set up. Is it to do with that? I don't know. There's so many. I've spent many an hour.
I was listening to you deeply there,
trying to explore and get to the core root of a lot of this stuff. And I think that there's not any one answer.
We spoke about earlier, didn't we, relationships, and I said you were saying, "Oh, I'm still single," whatever, and I was saying like you may find that you need to find a special type of guy to be able to kind of, because from the outside you come across so confident, you know, and powerful and confident and successful and all these kind of things, and not every guy can handle that.
Not every
Most
guy.
guys will feel inferior, insecure.
Yeah.
In that position.
Yeah. So there's that on one hand.
Not that warrants domestic violence, by the way. I'm talking about something else.
Yeah. I think it brings in types that want to conquer, types that think that they want a strong woman, but what that actually really looks like is different, and they don't know how to navigate that. I also think that, and I'm really big on, while exteriorly, I try and be really real. That's why I talk about the journey with mental health and the hormones. And I'm very honest about that having to do another level of healing because I needed another shift. I've been to some very dark places within the journey, even of late. And so I don't ever want to, I think I'm perceived in a certain way, and I am strong and I am confident and I do know who I am and I do know what works for me and what I want, and I will speak my truth and I will have my boundaries and I won't allow people to violate them. But I also have this deep, soft side that is very vulnerable and actually really needs to be held with my emotions and my space. And so there's, I just need a hug. I just need some love. Yeah. Yeah. So I think,
like when you explain it like that to me, it's the perfect balance, no? No, because like there's nothing to hide from being strong.
Yeah.
Like that's a good thing.
Yeah.
We should all be strong.
Yeah.
You know, we should all be, able to deal with stuff and be resilient and rely on ourselves, not just rely on the other person.
Yeah.
You can't live life hoping that everyone else is going to make it okay for you.
Yeah, well, 100%. I spent a long time hoping, and I think that's partly why I made a lot of wrong choices in terms of relationships as well, is I was looking for a rescuer. I felt like if I could just find someone to love me, then I'd be okay, right? And it took me a long time. I was a bit of a slow learner to realise that there's no one coming to rescue me. I have to learn to be okay with me. And I have to learn to love me, not expect someone else to love me back to life. I have to learn to love myself. And then whoever comes in is a bonus. But I think that when you do a lot of work on yourself, because you become so self-aware, other people can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves, right? And and that means the population of that is a lot smaller. I think that, I don't know. I think that because I am deep and because my value system is based around a lot of this stuff, that again shrinks the population. I get asked a lot, how come you're still single? It's probably one of the most asked questions that I get asked, mainly by men.
Sorry.
Not putting you in that pool, but I get a lot of people ask that. I don't get it. And it's not just out of because someone hasn't chosen me. I think that's the kind of
also like, where's that fucking pressure coming from? Maybe you want to be single,
like
as in, where's this mindset that, oh my God, why are you still single? Like, maybe I want to be single.
100%. Well, so I did a video on it because that was exactly, maybe in this season I want to be. Maybe I'm single because I'm being very wise about who I bring into my space and my life. Maybe I'm single because my energy is best served over here at the moment. Or do you know what I mean?
Also, like when you're 18 and you're 20, and I don't mean this to sound morbid, but you've got time to fuck around. Like you've got time to, do you know what I mean? Like have a go there for 5 years, have a go here for 3 years, that didn't work, that didn't work. Like as you get older, I think now, like I'm 35, I'm 36 this year. If I was to become single now, there wouldn't be games. Yeah. Because don't get me wrong, if I've got basic needs that need to be met, I'd meet those needs. That's different. But when it comes to relationship dating, I'd probably be cheesily honest in the terms that, look, this is what I'm looking for.
100%.
Is it for you? If it's not, sound, really nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Let's crack on.
There is a danger with that, though, especially for women. And there's been research done into this as well. But a woman needs to know what she wants. But then there was this like wave of women then going, right, I need to communicate what I want. That's quite dangerous if you are a woman who's come from toxic relationships, or you've had an ability to pick partners who are quite good at them molding themselves into exactly what you've said that you want in the instance. So it's
to reel you in.
Yeah. So it's a bit of the balance of being really strong on knowing what you want and being quite clear in terms of a certain sense of boundaries, but not giving everything, so that you can sit back and watch a little bit.
Isn't it sad that we have to do that?
It is.
In terms of, like, effectively what you're doing is how we do business, right? It's poker. That's a business mentality. That's a transactional mentality. You know, like, I'm a promoter, you're a promoter, we're trying to make our clubs busy. I might tell you that I'm not busy because I'm trying to go here. I'm telling you I'm not going to put flyers out there. It's like a I don't know how to describe it, and I might not be describing it correctly to what you said, but the fact that you have to not give away what you're really looking for to make sure that I'm not just playing the game to get through the door is sad.
It is really sad. It is really sad. But I also think that you could look at it like that's playing a game, which I think when I used to be in the school of I'll just be completely transparent, be completely honest about everything. I came from that school of thought, but we don't have to share everything right in the beginning. Like that's like me bearing my soul. I mean, I know I've just done it on this podcast, but I haven't been explicit about what I'm looking for.
No.
But I'm very open. So it's not like I play games in holding back. It's not about that. I just think that there is a level of wisdom that until you get to know someone a little bit and you get to meet their friendship circles and you get to that's like a stranger comes to your door. Yeah. And this is the thing that I teach with boundaries. A stranger comes to your door. You don't know this person from Adam. You don't tell that person, come in, I'm going to tell you my whole life story and just knock yourself out. Here's my whole house. This is how I like it. You wouldn't do that with a stranger, would you? That would be insane. You wouldn't see it as playing games by keeping them on the doorstep, having a little bit of a conversation, seeing how they react. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Seeing who they are. Then you can go, oh, it was really nice talking. And a week later they come by and they knock again for something and you have another bit of a conversation, and bit by bit you go, oh, okay, this person has some qualities that I like. There's some integrity there. I can see that they're doing good work here. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily about playing games as such, but more about just having some real wisdom about who you allow into your space. Because like you said, as you get older, my time is precious.
Sacred,
it's sacred. My heart, my soul, my home, my kids' environment, sacred. So I'm going to just be really wise about who I bring into that.
Yeah, it makes sense. And obviously I'm speaking from a different position, right? I'm in a relationship, have been for 12 years.
Yeah.
So like my thoughts are probably a little bit outdated, generally speaking.
But it is sad. It would be nice that we lived in a world where you could just trust someone the moment you meet them. But that's not reality. Going back again, back in the day, a lot of things were organized. People knew people. You got together with people that were connected. So you had information. We're now on an internet date, and where I could go and meet someone in Birmingham, let's say, and I know nothing about their environment, who they are. So yeah, I think we're in a different time.
I agree. Let's touch on. So I mean, after everything we've spoken about, then somehow you end up on television on My Mum, Your Dad TV show. How the hell does that come about then?
Well, I did say that I'd always wanted to be on stage. There was always definitely a desire there. But it was just how life unfolded a little bit. I was on about 5 years ago on something called Rich Kids Go Skin.
Yeah.
So I was on that, me being the skin person, obviously, single parent with the 2 kids. And I realized that I really loved that experience. I found I just felt very comfortable and at ease. And it kind of sparked a little bit of that. So definitely on my vision board, I'd put more TV, and I'd kind of had that as a bit of a desire. And I'd actually applied for Married at First Sight about 6 months before.
Yeah.
And then got someone basically approached my son and I. But at the same time that person had approached my son and I, someone had sent me an ad for it. And I had contacted the person who posted the ad. I had contacted the person. So they had contacted me on my personal account, and I contacted them on my business account, and they'd also contacted my son. My son had been backwards, forwards messaging the woman, and I was messaging the woman. She hadn't put the 2 to 2 together because she hadn't seen that she'd reached out to me. Her brain didn't go, oh, that's the same woman. So me and my son were both speaking to exactly the same woman throughout the day at the same time. He came home, and I said, oh, did so-and-so send you that advert? And he was like, what advert? I said, oh, there's a new dating show. And I was like, I brought it up. I was like, what do you think? And he went, hold on. And I was like, what? He said, I've been speaking to a woman today who's asked me whether I've got a mum who's looking for love. and he was like, and I told her, yeah, my mum's definitely looking for love. And I know that she'd probably be up for being on TV. So, and then, the just ball rolled from there. So I was sort of putting it out there, and then it ended up kind of, coming into.
Did that show for you feel like you were stepping outside your comfort zone, or was it just pure enjoyment? Would you feel natural there?
I felt quite natural.
Mm-hmm.
I think the stepping out of my comfort zone, and I think I knew this prior to going in, I don't mind being on camera. I don't mind it. It was the unknown of, am I going to meet someone? It was more when the show aired and how that was going to unfold, that I knew was going to be a process of probably layers of uncomfortability. I don't think you can fully prepare yourself for the roller coaster. Well, for me, definitely it's been a massive roller coaster after that. So I've definitely experienced comfort zone after comfort zone being shaken up.
Really?
Both positive and more challenging.
What sense? Like a trolls online kind of sense?
No, that's one thing. I think because I'm quite open and transparent, right? I think that I had so much positive feedback from, I owned my story on the show, a little bit of it. And I think people like honesty, integrity, people,
especially in a reality show that everyone is trying to be someone they're not, kind of
100%. And I think the message that I've had from anyone who knows me is I was no different on there than I am in real life, and I think people can see that, hopefully. So I've had untold positive, hundreds and hundreds of positive feedback. So it's not that. I just think that the roller coaster it takes you on is there's this whole frenzy. And then you're like, oh my gosh, is life going to change? And the relationship, and then me getting a bit excited about that, and then that not working, and that being all out in public. And it was actually, we had separated a bit before the show aired. So as the show was airing, I already knew we weren't together. I was going through my emotional process of that, and then having to pretend that I was super happy because we weren't allowed to give anything away about the fact. So I had hundreds of messages. I'm so happy for you. That even people who knew me quite well, this is so amazing. This is what we've been waiting to see in your life. People who didn't know me, oh my gosh, we could tell that you two were the perfect couple. You were the ones we were rooting for. And in the process, I'm watching it with my boys and my friends coming around, and I was crying myself. And I was even watching the journey unfold and getting excited for my myself when I knew the outcome. I knew the outcome, but I was watching it and buying into the story as well. Like, the show was really well done and it was an amazing experience. But yeah, so then there's the whole frenzy and you think, oh my gosh, my life's gonna explode. I listened to one of your podcast episodes the other day and asked about why we do things, and is it from selfish motives or do we want to have an impact? And I've definitely gone on a real another level of the journey with that, because I want to have an impact on the world. And so with this coming back, I massively wanted to find love. Like, I've been single for a long time. I wanted that, and then that didn't work. And my expectations maybe around that, I definitely had to go through another level of acceptance, and then my brain went, maybe because when at first we thought it was just going to be quite a low key, although Davina McCall was, no one knew how it was going to go. It could have been, you know, quite a low level and not much, and then when it just really exploded in obviously not Love Island levels, but it was getting incredible viewing. And so then your brain goes, oh my gosh, maybe my whole life is going to change.
Yeah.
And then you go through that process of thinking that it is, and then everything goes quiet and you're left with yourself again, and what you hoped and thought life was going to look like and what it actually does, and then finding some balance. I also, with my I had a job at the time as well as my business, and when my history came out, because it was within an organization, it was made quite difficult, and I kind of felt quite backed into a corner where I made a decision to give in my notice. But I'd been there for 13 years. So there was the loss with that, and my history still having an impact, where I was trying to use it as something that a positive impact on the world. And in answer to that question that you asked someone else, I think that we are driven by selfish motives, and if you have a good enough heart, you are also driven, I want to have an impact, but does it benefit me? Do I feel good when I have an impact? Does it kind of make something in me feel better? 100%. We get a joy feeling when I know that I've done something well and I've had a positive impact on someone else. I get a physical feeling in my body. It feels good. So
feels
that,
better than anything you've ever felt.
Right. So that you could even say, is that you selfish? Are you driven just to get that dopamine hit? But I also know, if you really explore your heart, I also know I want to see women heal. I want to see men heal. I want to see a world that shifts into healing, and where there is all love and kindness. You do. I want that. And yes, there are selfish, 100%. Not selfish, but I want to see success for my boy. I want my boys to see success. I want my boys to see healthy relationship. I want them to be proud of me. I want to feel like I've left an impact on this world when I leave. I want to undo the stuff that I felt, that the damage that and where I hurt people and what I took from society, I want to give back. You could argue that they're selfish motives, right?
I wonder whether, like, I've not thought of it when I said that bit in that podcast. Now you've explained it. If it feels so good to humans when we do good to others, is that not deeply then rooted in us that that's the right thing to be doing? Right. Do you understand what I mean?
100%.
I've never thought of it till you've just said then.
Right.
But it does feel amazing. It feels better than any drug I've taken or anything I've done. This is like that feeling of being able to help someone achieve something or doing good.
Right. There's a bit of literature that says, like, it's scripture but every spiritual principle says the same thing, because I'm I geek out on different spiritual practices as well, is it's in giving we receive. Even in that sentence, like, we're looking to receive.
Well, almost every religious text has some form of, you know, that you've got to give first.
100%, but it's reciprocal.
Yeah.
It is, we give and then we get from the giving. So, yeah, I think it's deeply...
That is amazing.
Ingrained into our culture.
What's next for you, Natalie?
Oh, this is a $1 million question I've been asking myself.
Hopefully some knight in a big white horse is going to come and sweep you off your feet.
This is it.
But what about in the real world?
I definitely would love to do more TV if more opportunities came up. I do love that process. But again, I think that we can show up for life as much as we can, and some stuff we just don't have control over. So in the interim, if nothing comes up, that's okay. I'm trying to really rest in allowing life to unfold as it is. My business is massively on my heart. I coach women one-to-one as well. That's a big part of my business, and building retreats and having an impact. That's my purpose. And I've still got a nearly 16-year-old who's doing his GCSEs, and putting my focus and energy in there. And I think maybe in the springtime I'll look at dating again. I've been in a season of rest, and
That the mating season, is it? Spring.
Well, I just feel, winter's hibernation time. It is. You for me, I bunker down, and I've definitely had to go through some processes and do another layer of working out who the hell am I and where am I going with my life. I'm focusing on, the GCSE year is a big year for my boy as well. So I don't want to get distracted. And when you talked about the value systems, my kids are right at the top, and relationships and doing big things can quite often distract from that. So I'm just trying to be in a bit of a flow state at the moment, and show up as much as possible, have a bigger impact as possible, and hopefully some incredible I've become multimillionaire with the most handsome man in the world who just takes care of everything.
That would be the dream, wouldn't it?
That would be the dream.
Natalie, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your story. It's been incredible. You're incredibly strong, as I said, and I'm so glad to have shared it with you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Genuinely.
Thank you.